Okay, hello everybody. Today we're here in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 in JustFlight's Piper Warrior 2. We have a 58 nautical mile flight from Mike Romeo Yankee Monterey Regional to Sierra Juliet Charlie San Jose International. Both of those are payware airports, and we'll be using Foreflight today for all of our flight planning with overlays so you can see what I'm doing. Should be an awesome flight. Let's hop into the pilot seat and get started. Alright, we are running with live weather and it looks like a beautiful day, although it's a little bit windy here in California. Before we start everything up though, let's take a look at that awesome payware airport. Alright, we'll be using Foreflight for this flight. I'll be recording my screen as I use it, and then I'll add that as an overlay in post-editing for the video. You'll see it in the upper left-hand corner periodically throughout the flight. So we'll start by opening up Foreflight and tapping on checklists. Foreflight does have default checklists for aircraft, including the Piper Warrior, so we'll open that up. We'll check that our parking brake is set. That looks good. Next we'll go over to the carb heat, make sure that's off. We've got a carbureted engine, so we need to manage carb heat. We'll go down to our fuel selector, get that to left, and to make sure our radios are all turned off and the avionics switch, which is over here on the right, is turned off. Now we'll move to the engine start checklist for a cold engine. So we'll start by getting the throttle cracked open. We'll turn on the master, and I'll also turn on the alternator at this time. Get the fuel pump on and the mixture to rich. We'll yell clear prop and head down to the starter. And we've got ignition. I'm going to adjust the throttle here for about 1,000 RPM, and we'll check out our gauges. So we've got oil pressure, that looks good. And then we need to adjust our throttle so it's in the range of 800 to 1200, so I'll leave it at 1,000 for now. Now those are the checklist items. There are also flow items that aren't written down on the checklist. So this is everything we're going to do between that and taxiing, which includes getting the avionics on. So we'll flip the switch over here for avionics. Then we'll head up to our radios and start setting those up. And of course the nice thing about Foreflight is that you can tap on the airport icon and bring up all the info for it. So if we tap on this and go over to info, you've got all of our frequencies. And the first thing of course to do is to get the ATIS. So we'll dial in our ATIS. Now we're going to use COM1 up here for the ATIS. Personally, in real life, I use a paper kneeboard, although I've been thinking about using a digital kneeboard with the iPad mini strapped to my knee. I'm not quite sure that I trust it yet, but it does have great features, like the ability to use the Apple Pencil and just write notes on it, copy your ATIS down, copy your clearance. So we're going to do that for this flight. Foreflight comes with default templates for copying down the ATIS, the craft template for clearances, so we will open up the ATIS template, and we're listening to live ATC for the real life ATIS since we're running with real weather.
Control apparent runway cell lines over about 500 feet. Ensure you lined up for the correct runway. Full control for all IS aircraft to San Francisco, to Los Angeles, San Diego, and Las Vegas. Business contact, you have information, Sierra. Alright, confirmation 01954 Zulu, wind 2904, visibility 10, clear. Temperature 14, dew point 8, altimeter 3018. Here's the visual runway 28 left approach needs, landing departing runways 28 left and 28 right. Potential aircraft runway cell line separated by 500 feet, ensure you lined up for the correct runway. Full control for all IF aircraft to San Francisco, to Los Angeles, San Diego, and Las Vegas. There's contact via information, Sierra.
Okay, we've got our altimeter of 3018, so we'll head over here and dial that in. Since we're running with live weather, it should match up and we can test it by checking it versus field elevation after we enter it. So we've got 3018, which gives us around 250 for field elevation, and if we tap on Monterey Regional info and look at field elevation at the top, we can see it's 257. Looks good. Okay, you can see from the solid magenta lines that we are taking off from a Class Charlie airport, so it has a tower and a departure ring. That means we are going to get a squawk code, and we're either going to get that from clearance delivery or ground. So we're going to contact clearance delivery, even though we're flying VFR, to get our squawk and also pick up flight following. Even though we're navigating visually and not by VOR for this flight, there are 2 VORs that we can use if we get ourselves lost, so it's always a good idea to have those set up. The first is the nearby Salinas towered field. So if we scroll over here in Foreflight and zoom in, you can see that's 117.3 SNS for Salinas. So we're going to dial that into nav 1.
That's what I have as well.
The place we're going is San Jose, so if we zoom out on Foreflight and scroll up to San Jose, you can see that it is also solid magenta, so that's a Class Charlie airport. And it's a little bit hard to see the VOR information in all the clutter, but it has its own VOR, which is 114.1. Monterey clearance, November 2937 Romeo, with information Sierra. We are a Warrior P28A slant Alpha, request flight following destination San Jose, Sierra Juliet Charlie at 3,500. On departure, fly heading 020, maintain VFR at or below 2,000, departure 121.3, squawk 2313, November 2937 Romeo. Alright, we'll get that dialed into our transponder over here. And then there's 1 or 2 things to show you in the chart supplement that we can also access from Foreflight that we'll need to know for our departure. So if you go to the info tab here for the airport and scroll down, you can bring up the chart supplement. And when we read it, it's got all the information about the airport, and it also has noise abatement procedures. So if we zoom in, you can see, and I'll highlight this using the pencil, that on departure we can't make any turns before 900 feet. If we look at the IFR departures for 28 left, we can understand our VFR vectoring. So IFR aircraft is turning right 329 on departure from runway 28 left. We're taking off on 28 right, and we're being vectored along 020 to keep us away from that traffic. Monterey ground, November 2937 Romeo, Del Monte Aviation, taxi with Sierra for east departure. Taxi, runway 28 right, hold pad via Alpha November Charlie, hold short, runway 28 left, November 2937 Romeo. Okay, we can use the pen to annotate our taxi path here in Foreflight, so you can see that we're going to hold short runway 28 left, then cross 28 left and 28 right once they give us permission, and taxi to the hold pad over here for a run-up. Then we'll get a continue to taxi and hold short runway 28 right and depart from 28 right. Alright, I'm glad the winds have us taking off from 28 right. It means we'll get to taxi the full length of the airport and get to check it out. It is just an awesome payware airport with a lot of great detail. We are clear. Let's get going.
Left enable to the terminal via Alpha with you, 2041.
Reader
Okay, I've only flown Skyhawks. I don't know how Pipers taxi on the ground, but this seems way too fast. I've got the throttle at idle and it's rocketing. So I have to keep stepping on the brakes and you'll see poor Floyd jerking forward again and again. We do have some nice scenery. This is Aerosoft Simple Traffic, and it's putting the liveries, although they aren't quite right, but they're better than the generic ones. I can see the windsock off to the left is still telling us runway 28 right is the runway to use. Live ATC is saying that, the game's saying that. We'll pull up to the hold short for 28 left, and the game is landing traffic on the wrong runway. So we've got two jets landing on 10 left and 10 right. Cool that it's using both runways. I don't know why it's not agreeing with its own weather, so we're just going to ignore that and stick with where the wind is actually coming from. I got a bit of a crosswind. Let's get some variable wind. Maybe that's it. Maybe the wind was flipping around and that's where it put the jets. Alright, so we got a nice run-up area here. Right for 28 right. This is the hold pad. And we're going to turn here. There we go. So we'll pull up the run-up checklist in Foreflight.
Legion 82, Montana clearance clear to Las Vegas via the Monterey 5 departure.
Okay, so we'll tick all the taxi items.
Departure frequency 127.
And I'll take you through the full run-up. We'll talk about a couple things as we do this. So we'll start by getting our throttle up to 2,000 RPM.
Legion 82, there's slow to Las Vegas today. Give us a call at least 15 minutes before ready to push. Whenever you have a time that you know you can make your...
And we'll zoom down here so we can actually see the RPMs. We're going to need that for the mag check. A little bit higher. Next we'll do the mag check and check both left and right mags to make sure we don't have any fouling of the spark plugs. So when we do this check, we're looking for a drop and a max drop of 175, and then we're looking for the left and the right mags to drop equally, but no more than 75 RPM difference between the two of them. And that looks good. Next we'll head up to our vacuum gauge, which is on the right side of the panel here in the Warrior. I know in the Skyhawks that I fly, it's always a challenge to find it because it's usually very tiny. That looks good, that's in range. We'll check that our oil pressure and temperature are in the green. We don't have an air conditioner. We'll go up here to the annunciator panel and make sure that all of the lights are functioning. They are. And now we've got to check car beat. I'm curious if this is modeled. You have to do this on the Skyhawk as well. So we'll turn on car beat, and sure enough, we do get a little bit of an RPM drop, which is what we want. So we're checking for presence of carb icing with the car beat check. Next we'll turn the fuel pump off, make sure that our engine doesn't quit and that we still have fuel pressure. That looks good. And we're going to bring the throttle back down to 1,000 RPM. It's not on the checklist here, but on the Skyhawk, usually this step we go throttle idle and also check that the engine doesn't quit and turn on car beat with throttle idle as well. Okay, next we'll check that our flight controls are free and correct. Look out the window, make sure that everything's turning in the direction that we're turning the controls. Get our fuel pumped back on. We'll head down here and check our engine instruments once again and make sure that our carb heat is off. Make sure that our primer is locked and our mixture is set to full rich for this takeoff. Our seat belts and seat tracks and backs are all set. Our flaps, we're not using flaps for this takeoff, so they are set and set at 0. Our trim is set for the takeoff position. Our controls are free. We'll check that our door is latched. There's only one here on the right. That looks good. And we have no air conditioner, so it is off. Alright, the before takeoff checklist, so we'll make sure all of our lights are set. So we'll get our landing light on and our strobes on. Monterey ground, November 2937 Romeo, continue. Taxi and hold short, runway 28 right, 37 Romeo. Alright, this is the world's shortest taxi. So we'll open up Foreflight again and bring up the tower frequency from it.
Via the Monterey 5 departure. Clear vectors Sierra, November, Sierra.
Tap on info.
Papa X-ray November. Direct intel, November Tango Echo.
And we're at 118.40.
Direct Oscar Alpha Lima.
Monterey Tower, November 2937 Romeo, holding short, runway 28 right. Cleared for takeoff, runway 28 right, November 2937 Romeo.
Oscar
Alright, once again we will be using Sky Dolly, which is an awesome freeware plugin to record your flights and play them back, to give you some of the nice external beauty shots that you've seen in my recent videos. So you see the first one coming up here on takeoff. Alright, while we're doing this, I will give you a quick update on my real-life flight lessons. So I've had my second solo flight, that's another 3 full-stop landings with taxi back by myself. And my first solo flight was serene at sunset with me and 1 or 2 other planes that showed up in the pattern, but I pretty much had the airport to myself. My second solo, however, was crazy. It started off fairly quiet with just 1 plane in the pattern with me, but by the time I turned crosswind on my first flight, planes started arriving, and by my second lap around, we had 8 planes in the pattern, or arriving and leaving the pattern to deal with. So it really kept me on my toes and stressed me out quite a bit with needing to extend my downwind, extend my departure leg, watch where traffic was, and just keep on it. But I'm still alive. I survived, so I learned a lot from it. I fixed my headset and do have in-cockpit audio, so I might find a way to share it with you here on this channel. Alright, we just did our turn to our initial heading of 020 after passing 900, and we have been handed off to departure. NorCal departure, November 2937 Romeo, level 2000. Cancel altitude restriction, resume on nav, November 2937 Romeo.
214 November, NorCal approach, Razer, leaving south to 3016. 70 Delta, traffic 12 o'clock, 5 miles, turning eastbound, flight is 2F35, 2,500, will be fine.
Alright, we're on track. Let's enjoy that awesome flight simulator scenery. Alright, that landing wasn't terrible, but it was a bit hard, as you can see in the video. I'm still not quite sure how to fly the Warrior in the game. It uses a lot of the same speeds that the Skyhawk does, but whenever I fly those speeds and use flaps, I drop out of the sky like a brick. So I'll sort it out. It was definitely fun using Foreflight and using a lot of the flight planning tools that I would use for a real flight for this, so it was cool to share that with you. So if you enjoy content like this, be sure to click that like button, leave me a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. All of that really helps the channel. The YouTube algorithm serves it up to more people the more that you interact with my video. Thanks, as always, for flying along with me, and stay tuned for further flight adventures.